Hey everybody, welcome to my new YouTube channel for the Spicy Web. Today I want to talk to you about the Cascade Layers feature that's coming to CSS. It's something that I wasn't sure I was going to use. I wasn't sure how I might use it. So it took me a little while to kind of untangle the usefulness of it from the hype. But now I think the hype is definitely justified. So let's take a look at what Cascade Layers can do for us as we work on building out layouts and components in our HTML and CSS. So here I have a title, Hello World. It's an H1. I have another title here that's another H1, and this one also has a class is funky. So it looks funky. And now I have a card, which I've used an article tag for, article with a class of card. And I have an H2 in it, and that's the card title. And I want to make this also look funky. So something you might be tempted to do, something that seems pretty obvious, is if you have a style and you can say this H1 here is funky, you want this one to be funky too. So let's come over here and add is funky to our card title. And nothing happens. This, my friends, is what drives some people bonkers about CSS. When you get into these specificity wars, as people call it, where the specificity of the title within the card overrides the specificity of is funky. If we come look at our CSS here, and you'll notice I have all this layer stuff commented out. So we'll get to that in a minute once we start working on the Cascade Layers. So we have is funky here, color red, font family cursive, but down here we have article.card title with a color purple and a font family of sans serif, and that's winning. That's winning the specificity wars. So something a lot of people are tempted to do, because hey, it works, is to add the important directive. So let's type that in here, important. Now we have a funky title. For the win! Well, not quite, because let's say is funky was defined sort of at a framework level, and you've actually decided that you want funky titles to be not red, but green. So let's come down here and we're going to say is funky. And we're going to add an override green. And nothing happens. Once again, specificity wars. The green here doesn't work because we previously had defined that the color red is important, which puts it on a whole new level in terms of specificity. So now we have to, basically important becomes viral. All of a sudden you have to put important everywhere. So, okay, fine, we'll put important here. Okay, now we have the color green. But let's say somebody is doing a one-off in their HTML and they've decided that, well, they don't want funky to be red or green. They want it to be yellow. So we'll use our old friend, the style attribute, color yellow. And it's not yellow, it's green. Ah! This is why we need Cascade Layers. Let's back up a beat and try this all using Cascade Layers instead. So let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this funky. Let's get rid of this. Okay. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to define the order of layers. This is very important. You want to first define which order that you're going to define the layers in your document before you start importing or defining the Cascade Layers. So we're going to have a defaults layer, a components layer, and a variants layer. The nice thing about this is once you've defined that order, the actual order in the source that you add stuff into layers doesn't matter. You can have one layer over here and another layer over there, and it doesn't matter. So, we will start here with a layer, defaults layer, but we honestly could have a defaults layer elsewhere and it'd be fine. So we'll have our defaults layer, we'll have our variants layer, there we go. And we'll have our components layer. There we go. All right, so it looks much as it did before. We have a blue title, we have a funky title, and now we have a card title. However, if we come over here and we want our card title to be funky, is funky. Aha! It works! Why does it work? Because is funky is defined in the variance layer. And as we see here, the variance layer comes later than the components layer, which means the variance layer is going to override the components layer. I just had to do a quick edit there because I forgot I'd left important on here in is funky. So I took that off, and you can see it's still working even though we don't have important. So now we're going to come down here, and we want to make all the funky titles not red but green. And boom, all the funky titles are green. Now, why does this work here when it's not inside of a layer? Well, basically anything that's not defined within a specific layer is defined in sort of the, I don't know what the technical term is, but it's basically like user layer. That's like you're authoring stuff, and that's kind of what you want the top level to be. And all the other layers are going to be below that by default. So you don't have to put is funky here in some other layer that you define. You can just write it as a normal style, and it's going to override anything in these other layers. Now, what if we want to get rid of that, but over here we want to use style as before, make this yellow. Well, that doesn't look good, but the point is it works. We now have a yellow tile here just by using style. Again, we don't have to use important anywhere. There's no viral nature of having to use important everywhere. It just works. And the nice thing is, again, you can define layers in any order. So, we can take variance here, and we can actually have it before defaults. And it doesn't matter because at the very beginning of our document source, we have defined the order of layers. So once that order is defined, you can have your layers directive being anywhere. It can be inside of any style sheet. It can be imported from external style sheets, and everything's going to honor this order. And that is very important because you want to define a logical order like I have here, like some defaults or like a reset layer maybe, and then component level stuff, and then variants, and maybe you want a utilities layer sort of towards the end there. That's where it's easy to override things with like margin, padding, colors, etc. And you can do all that with Cascade Layers. And you don't have to worry so much about all these specificity wars like we saw at the beginning there, where it's just, it quickly becomes a nightmare. All right, thanks everybody for tuning into this first episode of The Spicy Web. Please be sure to subscribe to The Spicy Web for more tutorials and educational videos about web development and using vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Bye, everybody.